My name is Richard Augustus Schrader. He says Schrader. I went into service in 1951, October. Basic training in Tortuguero, about 16 weeks. And then subsequently, some of my friends went to Korea. I went to Germany. Did a tour in Germany. Returned home in, was 53, around that time. 2 years later. Extended for 1 year. Served in Lucifer, 296 infantry. 296, I believe, was in Lucifer, Puerto Rico. Volunteered to go to Korea. They sent me to Oklahoma. At Oklahoma, volunteered to go to Korea. They sent me back to Germany.
Well, why did you volunteer to go
Well,
to
the thing
Korea?
is that when we got back in, it was wrong, 51, 53, and we met, those that went to Germany met in Fort Dix. I think it was Fort Dix, New Jersey. And then later on, we caught the ship in New York. And here came the Korean troops, my buddy that trained with me in basic training. And, talking about war, and I'm young, so wow, sounds good. So I decided that after I extended for 1 year in Puerto Rico, I'll check it out. And then another thing too, I guess I was fortunate or unfortunate, what? But a gentleman was my captain commander in Germany in my first tour. And later on, when I went, I think it was, in the around 54 or so, and then met him in Oklahoma. But he probably was a National Guard type when he came in and probably didn't renew his category. And now he was a first sergeant of the center that I went to. And right away recognized him. How you doing? Fine. I'm going to Korea. Okay. A couple of weeks later, I find myself on honors back to Germany. I guess he was looking out for me. Right.
Well, because a lot of Americans died in Korea.
I knew.
So
Yes.
God was looking out for you too. Well, let's talk about some people that you knew that did go to Korea. What did you, from what you heard in the news or what you read about, why do you even think the war was taking place in Korea?
Number one, I was quite young when I went in the army. I won't say my age, but quite young. And my brother had served in World War II. So when he came home, even before he came home, my friends, myself, I grew up in a sugarcane estate, and we were practicing. I was young, marching, take my broomstick over my shoulder, up and down the estate. And so then they came home later on in the 40s, and that was my motivation. These guys coming home, and I remember distinctly when the war was over, my brother was serving in the Hawaiian Island, and he came home that evening around 10, and one of these military trucks came into the estates and back up to our house. And here jumped a guy with his duffel bag and his uniform, And I remember wearing his cap and wearing his boots and things of that sort. So I was really conditioned and ready and really wanted to go to join the service.
Joining the service. But what do you think was going on in Korea?
All I know there was in Korea. All I know there was a war in Korea, and my brother had served in the army, and I wanted to serve.
even though you could maybe die?
That wasn't in my mind. You know, that when you're a young man and 16, that doesn't cross your mind. At least it didn't mine.
Well, then you're very, very fortunate, and God blessed you, because I've met with many veterans who, at age 16, 17, 18, like you, they didn't think, they could possibly die in a war, but they saw a lot of their
Yes. Well, I
friends.
served with a gentleman in Korea, a buddy of mine, same squad, Bambiva, Clarence. And he went to Korea. He made it through. But he was the first Virgin Islander to die in the war in Vietnam.
You went to Vietnam again after Korea?
Huh?
He went to Vietnam again after Korea?
After Korea, yes, he went to Korea. He was a real soldier, gung ho. Bambiva. Yep.
And he came back and he shared some stories about the war?
Well, I didn't met him when he returned from the war. He lived in St. Thomas and then for a while, but I believe he had moved and then lived in the States and married and lived in the States. So I never saw him from the time when he first come back from Korea, probably in a ship. Yes, I saw him. But then later on he re-upped, went to the States, and later on went to Vietnam some years later, and then and he died.
Were you born in Virgin Islands?
I was born right here in St. Croix.
Tell us a little bit about, St. Croix and being a Crucian, right?
Yes.
Crucian.
Yeah.
And so you were born in 1930s.
Born in 1935.
1935. I believe that the U.S. granted citizenship to Virgin Islanders in 1927. So that was shortly after, you were granted citizenship, yet you still wanted to salute the flag of a...
Oh, by the time I volunteered for the service, we were citizens. Oh, sure. Citizenship came sometime... I'll have to check on that, but I know we were U.S. citizens. Because the reason why I say this is that in the 40s, when my brother and all those went to the war, it was a result of making an act by Congress and making the draft applicable to the Virgin Islands so that they can go. So this was around 43 or something like that. We were a citizen some years before, yeah.
How do you feel about that? What do you feel as being part of the U.S. territory? Do you feel like sometimes you're second-class citizens?
Yes, the way we're treated. Number one, we can't vote for president and things like that. So, but all in all, I think we're much better off than being a citizen of the United States than being a citizen of Denmark.
Really?
That's my feeling.
Wow.
Of course, there's a lot of improvement. Like I said, that Virgin Islanders was actually serving the military in World War One. Okay, a guy by the name of Ludwig Harrigan. He was in World War One because what people was migrating and going after the transfer from the Virgin Islands, and even before, people that went to the States and lived, you see. So his parents were from the Virgin Islands, and probably was in New York at the time. and it was in World War One. Here on the island, after the transfer in 1917, the United States Navy got young people to get in the service, make it possible for them to volunteer for the service to form the first black naval band right here in St. Croix. Am I talking about after the transfer? Right. I knew people that joined, I think it was 1919, I think 1918. One of them comes to my mind because it was a friend of mine, Auguste Maté, and he died, he was 97 years old. Matter of fact, I wrote a story of him in one of my books. Another guy is Peter Tolang from here, and many more. There was about, I had to be close, about 20, and also from St. Thomas. You ever heard about Alton Adams? Do some research on him. He was the band leader. Matter of fact, his picture is in the museum in Washington, D.C. I saw it.
You mentioned you wrote a book.
Huh?
Did you?
Books.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a writer.
What kind of books? I would love to read one.
Poetry is my first love. I'm a retired prison warden, and I started writing poetry 1 year before my retirement in 1984. And then it turns into short stories, interviewing folks